Hello, hopefully you can hear me. Great, thank you. Thank you for saying the sound is good. Yes, as you can see, we've got the chat going on. Feel free to use that during the talk. I won't be able to reply to all your comments. There will be a question and answer or Q&A. You can feel free to ask any questions. I can see someone's already done that. And that's great. Thank you, Pilar. What I was going to say is I'll start, well, it's coming up to 12:30. Thank you very much for coming. Bienvenidos, bienvenue. And I'd like to sort of introduce myself. My name is Martin Pickett, and I've done postgrad work on motivation, language learning. And I've been doing this through LANACOS now more than 25 years. We regularly come to the language show. And this one obviously is the first virtual show, but like most of you, I expect we're all just getting used to working virtually. And I think virtually doesn't mean by ourselves either, it means with others. And that's why this socially active language learning with the aid of technology and savoir faire, I think is a very sort of good title to use, because I mean, essentially we're dealing with European languages plus Mandarin and Japanese, but if you could all just sort of say, maybe all in the chat, hello in the target language that you'd like to work with, that will also give me an idea whether it's French, bonjour, merci, hello, yes, bonjour, hola, привет, yeah, привет to you, and I'm looking for ohayo gozaimasu perhaps, or maybe, no? Okay, well, oh, excellent. Great range of languages. And I always say there's no one best language. Ultimately, you choose it. It's a personal choice. And motivation is very important. So I think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at people who are motivated and in different times of your life too. So if you can have a look at, let's have a look. We have here a screen of the world, and it's about technology, but it's also about social. And the social side to learning is very important. We're all kind of living in this world where we need to think about, let's have a look. I'll go on to the, hopefully you can see the, yes, right. Okay, hopefully you can see there's the map of the world. And now what are we talking about with language learning? Well, I think at this stage, we're talking about a hybrid type of learning. i.e. it's blended. Technology has arrived in a very big way. It was always bubbling away. Lots of good language teaching methods before COVID-19. But I think COVID-19 has been the catalyst. And if anyone has been learning languages for a long time and maybe just coming back to language learning now, even 5 years is a big time. A lot has changed. People now are learning languages, yes, through podcasts. It's a lot more interactive. The speeds, broadband speed has really improved delivery. And so I think you need to think about improving your language skills, not only with technology, but quality, high quality teaching. And that's, you know, what is a good teacher? Well, hopefully this will explain a little bit of what you should be looking out for. Someone who's consistent, someone who's got a track record. Again, word of mouth is good. And we deal a lot with language centers who have about, you know, let's say a reservoir of good language teachers. And I think sometimes if you just choose one teacher, that can be high risk, because guess what? We're all human. And we all end up having different lives.
Martin, I'm sorry to interrupt. Some of your audience are saying they can't see the map. Are you?
Oh, sorry. Hopefully you can see the hexagons. Can you see the hexagons?
No, you haven't shared your screen yet,
Oh,
so you
sorry.
just need to share screen.
Okay, sorry. Let me just do that. Thank you. Let's have a look. Right, sorry. Here we are. Okay. Hopefully, can you see the map? Let me
Yes.
go into there.
We've got the slide that says,
okay.
There we go. There we go.
Thank you. So hopefully, I mean, this is just a map of the world, and I've been hopefully giving you a bit of a taste of the language. And now we'll look at the graphics. And I've used here a few hexagons to give you an idea of what is what, because teaching is the core to the learning experience. And as much as we can learn autonomously, and technology is great for this, a teacher can tell you, a good teacher can tell you something in 10 seconds that would probably take you a long while to find out yourself. But we're looking at blended learning too. So you learn in a very sort of, I would say, individualistic and personalized way. It doesn't mean necessarily individual learning, i.e. one-to-one, but you could learn in groups. You can learn from others quite well. You know, it's very good sometimes to be in a multinational group and see how different learners from different countries enjoy listening to another person speaking the foreign language, and you might find there are certain phrases that they use and techniques, and this can all be very beneficial. So what I would say is, you know, we've done this like for nearly 30 years, and we've got a lot of experience, we've got a lot of feedback, and I think at this stage, you know, where are you starting from? I mean, we're talking about an action plan, but you do have to have some focus, and you have to think how much time. You know, we get many people perhaps on a gap year, career break, retirement, who decide that this is an opportune moment. I think perhaps in COVID-19, in lockdown, also gives us that idea, that moment just to think, what language? You know, are we a beginner? Are we a false beginner? We have this term for someone who maybe started the language a long time ago. Maybe they already know Spanish and Italian, so Portuguese is going to be an easy option for them. Maybe they want to learn a completely different language. Maybe they used to be advanced in French, but haven't used it for a while. These are all very important stages of language learning. We all go through them, and we need to think about where we are and what focus and where do you want to go. So I think setting the right expectations and goals are very important. Also, do we want high fluency? Do we have the time for that? That's also incredibly important. So I think if we can just think about those questions, those are sort of the ideas. When you're starting to plan, you should be thinking to yourself, what's my target language? What's my maybe next language? Or, you know, what are the things that are going to motivate me also in terms of, do I have time at hand? Have I been to the country? Do I have friends from the target language? These are, again, all key elements. I like to use the analogy of a bridge, because a bridge to your future gives you the idea, there's a psychological also distance, and we do have to cross bridges. Maybe we're very happy in one culture, but I think monolingualism is really not so common to the human experience as we think it is. I mean, we are more naturally multilingual than monolingual in history. And the Africans have a great saying that, you know, you do need to be multilingual just to survive and to live, and to, you know, you could go on, many other quotes have been used about different souls. And we want to sort of say, this is your opportunity also to use a bridge. You will go into a different culture, a different experience, a different way of living. And this, I think the language is the vehicle, and you can use it to cross. So I've come up with a few ideas. And again, these are experiences that people have done always. I think actions are always going to speak louder than words. going to the country, living it, experiencing what it is to live in a country is a great example of this. It's something that employers have always worked on. You can always find people who've got that confidence because they've lived in the country. Budget your time, be flexible, and plan ahead socially. I think this is the great moment. I think I'm very excited, in fact, that this moment has arrived in history where we've had a bit of a timeout where we can start asking ourselves, well, what do we want in life? What are the things that we really, really want to do in our lives? Maybe we've had the opportunity now to think, and I expect, in the years, hopefully the months to come, but we don't know exactly with all that's going on quite yet. But once we have a better idea on what we can do and how we can travel, and there's no sort of restrictions anymore, then I think we will find lots of people deciding, well, you know what, I really want to go there. I really want to, we'll be a lot more careful on the holidays we choose, on how we spend our time, our money also. These are things again, and socially, we can plan these. We can plan these with our friends, our family. And I think, again, trying to think about yourself is very important at this stage. Language learning ultimately is quite a lonely experience. We do need things, but the technology has improved vastly. I mean, the amount of podcasts, and hopefully you've visited some of the other language show seminars, the amount of knowledge now we have, how we can know what are the top 2,000 most frequently used words, how we can change them, how we can play games, how we can quiz ourselves. Also, these are very important methods that used to take a long time for language learners to do, when we used to write cards out and maybe we'd have to read a book on just one language or one side of the language. Now there are so many things, and I think a good teacher, and this is who we deal with mainly, will choose some good tools for you to use. And the technology does exist, but the next part is the savoir faire. And the savoir faire of knowing how to do things, knowing which tool will be most appropriate for which learner and which group of learners is very, because you have to be motivated and you have to find some kind of, balance between learning by yourself, but also using that in authentic situations. I've come up here with a list of perhaps good authentic multimedia solutions. It's not exhaustive, but it gives you an idea. Obviously YouTube, Vimeo, TikTok, these are new ways, especially for the young. I would say TikTok, repeating language. Linguist, I'm a big fan of Linguist, this translating software where you can see how other translators have translated a phrase. Sometimes it's not just a simple translation. Sometimes you find nuance. Nuance is very important in language. And I think, again, a good teacher, and once you go beyond the intermediate stage, nuance is a real benefit and an advantage in whatever you want to do later on with your languages. So I would recommend Linguist rather than Google Translate. I had a very good tip. If you want to find out quickly what a word is in a foreign language, don't look for just the Google Translate, look at the images, and you might find the image of that thing that has come out in the foreign language, because the images tend to be more appropriately organized in this way. Also, think about films and storyboards and podcasts. Storyboards, if no one knows about them, they're a good way of telling stories. I mean, maybe you want to tell someone your story. You need a beginning, you need to have some idea, use the words that are your key words and sentences, and then you're going to think about, how does it play out? How can I revisit the vocab? We use these evaluation tools like quizzes. I think, again, also to test yourself, and this idea of cognitive load and giving yourself a bit of time and space so that what you're learning goes into your long-term memory as opposed to just your short-term memory. these are very important techniques. And again, we're getting a much better idea of how the human brain works. And this, again, has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And the amount of data, the amount of information, and how teachers also are learning from the experience. We're learning, we're all good learners, hopefully, and we all understand that the world moves on, that we are more demanding. We need to make sure that when we are learning, we have someone in front of us who knows what we want and where we can get to, and that can also be honest and say, well, this is going to be where we need to focus at this moment. I can see certain steps. Sometimes, certain learners are going to take longer time to learn. And we've found this even with the same teacher, So again, it's very important to have a good teacher, high quality, but also a teacher that you can communicate with. And you can actually tell them, well, this I understand, this I don't understand. And it's very important for feedback purposes. So what are you waiting for? Okay, well, hopefully you've come to this talk with ideas. Hopefully you've got your language where you want to do, what you want to, but maybe the next question is, how are you going to do it too? Think again about yourself, about who maybe countries you visited, maybe a country you visited only for a couple of days, but you'd like to return to, or you think this is a culture that really interests me, and now's an opportune moment. Or you've decided, well, at the moment I've got to work, I've got to keep my job, etc. But once I have a chance to go on holiday, then maybe I'll go there, or I can perhaps dedicate a certain amount of time a day to studies, or again, virtual learning. We're at that point whereby virtually you can be in other places. And autonomy still is important, conversations, but learning away from the classroom should be encouraged. You should be thinking about your own interests. If you like football, or if you like cycling, join clubs, even join clubs virtually. Talk about the Tour de France in French, or talk about La Vuelta in Spanish. You're going to start picking up the same syntax, same questions. You'll probably also have a very good base of knowledge on that subject. Cooking, for example, some of the ingredients. Maybe these are points of reference that you can use to start guessing. And again, part of language is sort of second guessing, as well as just learning vocabulary. We sort of pick up intuitively from others. So this is very important. So think about conversations outside of a classroom. Of course, a classroom setting, whether it's virtual or in a language center or at a school, is still very important. But we also have to think about this hybrid idea, this idea of, well, I could do that maybe a couple of weeks, I could go for a long time, or I want to do this a little bit more regularly. I would say that's very important. As well as just going that, I think we have to foster good language habits. I mean, we're at that point whereby maybe 10 minutes a day is just too short. I think we can do, perhaps spend half an hour a day now, watching international films, analyzing resources, visiting websites, joining Facebook groups on a certain topic that you like, but in the foreign language. These are all available. Obviously, sometimes there's too much choice, but ask friends you trust, or ask a teacher that you can, they're also interested. They're also interested in how you learn, what interests you. And, again, it could be anything from sport to culture to cooking to a specific field. I mean, we've had people interested in music and singing, and they've joined choirs. So again, do things that are of interest and socially, because I think, again, one of the things that many people say is, oh, I could do this one-to-one and, just hide away. I think you can learn a lot more from being social, a lot more from others, and they're not so intensive, but you're still learning and you're still enjoying language as a very natural phenomenon. So fostering good language habits, and think about, your subject when you are at home. What if? Imagining the end goal is also very important. Imagining you in a place speaking the language is very motivational. Reward yourself. I think, again, another, sometimes we go through all this hard work and we think it's hard work, but then we don't reward ourselves. Try to reward yourself, whether it's making a good meal for yourself. Hopefully, once the restaurants are back, treat yourself to a French foods or a takeaway. I know you can go for takeaway, but also later on, maybe traveling, going to that place. These are great rewards, and say, well, once I've got to this level, then I think I'll do that. Do it in steps that are achievable rather than something that's too unrealistic, especially at the long term, because you do have stages. I think that's very important too. So what I would say is, you know, as I come to the end of this, because unfortunately I've only got about half an hour and I could go on for a lot more, and I'm very, very interested in learners. I'd be happy to answer your questions. I think, where is it going then the next steps? I think virtual reality and augmented reality, which is slightly different, and I can just make that quick sort of experience. I mean, augmented reality is where you're getting information in a digital format, but it's still not, you're not immersed in it. Is still very important, because I think this is the way we, maybe the next generations, are going to pick up a lot of their knowledge. And we can pick up the knowledge not only in English, but I think by picking it up in French or another language, or Chinese, Japanese, there's so much we can benefit from this technology that exists today. It does exist today. I think it's not being totally utilized. And this is someone, you know, who started, I think, one of the first language websites in the 90s. And I remember meeting people who were constantly saying, oh, internet, it'll never happen. You know, it can't happen. Well, those same people I do meet from time to time, and they don't like to talk about that's what they said at the time, but it does exist. It's part of our lives. And I think also the next generations and these generations today are using it to full effect. I think perhaps what has precipitated it is COVID-19, you know, whether it's at university level, imagine Harvard going online, Cambridge going online, all these universities, we're talking hundreds of years of doing it a certain way, teaching in a certain way. These have all been sort of changed and shattered. We will go back to face-to-face, and it is good. We still want to meet people. We still want that human contact. But I think also we're in a very important time in history where we can say, well, I can do this virtually, or I could perhaps delay my learning, or I could do some from home, and then when I go abroad or when I do something else, I can make the most of my time. I think, again, I'm very, very excited about the times we live in, and I'm very happy, and hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you could maybe put a thumbs up or whatever, put your hands up if you think this has been of interest, and say maybe yes or no in the target language. I'll be very happy to hear. I'm here for questions and answers. I'm going to see if I can see if I've got quite a few here. Yes, let's have a look. Hopefully, the slides. Yeah, good question. If you go to the website, the LANACOS website, which hopefully I'll just move a little bit there, you'll see it. It's www.lanacos.com. I'll be printing up the slides later on there. We do have a newsletter. We offer competitions, challenges. We've even offered language courses abroad, Spanish, English, French, Japanese, Chinese over the years. You're more than welcome to join in, tell friends and family. It's a very important part, I think, of learning, is challenging yourself, making the challenge, you know, something beyond perhaps what you can do now, but something that is achievable. And once you can achieve that, then moving on to the next part. Which app would you recommend improving intermediate grammar in French and Spanish? That's a good question. I don't like to give you a definitive answer on that, and I'm sure hopefully maybe some other people in the chat will have ideas. by all means share those. There are some common ones. I think also the way we learn, I think you should have maybe a toolbox. And in that toolbox, you should, have maybe 3 or 4 apps at least, and you should maybe have a podcast, and maybe you should also have a go-to person or a forum, speak to other learners, perhaps in a similar level or situation to yourself, because there we are picking up so much information. And I think at the same time, we have to filter that information in order to get the knowledge, because the knowledge and then the intelligence of how we use it is going to be so important from now on until the future. And as I said, I think we're, how to keep the motivation for learning. That's a very good question. I wrote a PhD on motivation and language learning. And it was one of those things I think is giving yourself, what do you expect from yourself? I think we all go through dips. Sometimes we think we're even regressing when really we've just arrived at a plateau. It's understanding yourself. I think thinking about thinking and thinking about how you learn also is very motivating. It's one of these elements to language learning that's not just about being able to speak the language, but it's learning about yourself. I remember going to Japan and learning Japanese, and I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about English. I learned about, why am I doing it? Of course I was there, but some people travel to a country and they don't learn the language. So you do have to ask yourself, well, what's going to motivate me? And in the end, I thought about, I loved the writing system. I liked the people. I found the culture fascinating. There are other things that will motivate you. So how to keep your motivation for learning is very important. I think also virtually, you can test yourselves. Virtually, you can go down that curious route of going through interests that have maybe in your normal life you're interested in. Well, why don't you do that in the foreign language? Why don't you do that in the target language? Those are things I would be recommending you do. Anyway, unfortunately, I think I'm coming to the end. Yes, I should post maybe the PhD on the website. It's in the British Library. It was about, especially English language speakers. Why would you want to learn a foreign language? But I think it has relevance to the wider world. So thank you, Karina, for that. But yes, feel free to email me, languages@lanacos.com. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation, and maybe an instant email is a good starting point. If you want to have a conversation, of course, we can have a conversation by Teams or Zoom or whatever. Also happy to help with schools if any of you are teachers and want to communicate what it's like to be a linguist these days in a multilingual world. And I think the benefits, it saves time, saves money, even earns you, possibilities and opens doors. I think languages do that. They open doors. So I'm very happy to listen to your views, and I hope you've benefited from the chat as well as my talk. And there will be more details on the language share. I think this session is going to be recorded, so feel free to go back to it. And as I said, I will be printing the slides also. If you need to do that, that would be good. And feel free to tell friends, family, visit the website. And as I said, teaching is very important, and by extension, learning. As teachers, we are learning too. So thank you very much. All the best, and à la prochaine, hasta la próxima, matane, and we'll meet again, whether virtually or face-to-face at the next language learn. So thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.